Hey there, everybody. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another episode of What's Hot with Sea of Tranquility. It's Wednesday, new review day here on the channel. Mostly we review new music, but we do occasionally review books and things. Today is no exception here on the book side. We've got a brand new book from Frank White and Alan Tecchio called Jersey Metal, A History of the Garden State's Heavy Metal Scene, Volume 1, 1969 to 1986. So there are the two authors right there, Frank White, Alan Tecchio. Now, I have known Frank White for many, many years. Frank is one of the most legendary rock and hard rock and just music photographers here in the States for decades. He has got, look at his list of, so I'll read you their bios. Frank has been a music photographer for 47 years, selling his photos nationally and internationally to a variety of music magazines, record companies, music TV programs, DVD companies, book companies, and the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Frank also started the Frank White Photo Agency in 1986. He toured with bands as their photographer in the late 80s and early 90s and was the photographer for the Uncle Floyd TV show in 1998. Frank became an author in 2018 with 2 books in print to date. Alan has been a singer in metal bands starting in the early 80s with Prophecy, Aggressor, Hades, Nonfiction, Watchtower, All Time Low, Seven Witches, Power, and more recently with Level Fields and Mike LePond's Silent Assassins. Of course, Mike LePond, bassist from Symphony X. He has also been a writer, columnist, and graphic designer for nearly 30 years and has interviewed dozens of metal bands. In Jersey Metal, Frank and Alan team up to offer a unique autobiographical perspective on New Jersey's heavy metal music history through photos, ads, interviews, and band bios. Jersey Metal Volume 1 covers the early years from 69 through 86. The book focuses not just on artists and bands from the Garden State, but also worldwide acts, local original cover, as well as tribute bands that played in New Jersey. There is also respect paid to the venues these groups frequented, the radio stations, record companies, stores, and the Jersey Shore that all helped grow New Jersey's wild heavy metal scene. I want to thank Dan Brown. Of course, Dan Brown from the Monsters Den was at recent Chiller Theater, met up with Frank and Alan and got a copy of this for me. So thank you, Dan. I appreciate it. So this is a very cool, big, thick book that highlights as I read before, it goes in lots of directions, in addition to being a really cool kind of autobiography of Frank White himself. So, like I said, I've known Frank for many, many years, but this is the story of how Frank got the music bug, how Frank took some of his first ever photographs of Led Zeppelin at Madison Square Garden, how he used to sneak out of his house as just a young teenager with his camera, get the camera into places like the Garden and the Beacon Theater and the Meadowlands and all these other places later on, and just take these amazing photographs of some of these legendary bands. And then he talks about, both he and Alan talk about growing up in New Jersey with the rise of the New Jersey metal scene and a lot of the clubs and a lot of the cover bands, and it's just really interesting to listen to stories about these like local New Jersey cover bands who were like coming up around the same time as like Kiss and Alice Cooper and doing like Kiss, Alice Cooper tributes, David Bowie tribute, having these type of bands at a time where I don't really remember like tribute bands being that much of a thing back then. That's like very popular now, but like it's interesting to hear them talk about bands who were doing like Kiss tributes like a year or two after Kiss were on the scene, right? So like so shortly thereafter, doing like an Alice Cooper tribute show as a young band in New Jersey when Alice was, still kind of coming up and rising in popularity. So it's really interesting to hear all this. And there's tons of cool photographs. It's a big, heavy book, so I want to be careful in opening this up. But here you have lots of photographs. Great pictures of Rush, right? And it's interesting is like, Frank and I were at so many of the same concerts. Hear him talk about, being at such and such a show and taking pictures and whatnot. And I'm like, God, I was at that show too, right? Back in the early 80s, early mid 80s. And they talk a lot about, Rock and Roll Heaven, the great heavy metal store started up by John and Marcia Zazula, right? Johnny Z, Megaforce Records. There's all these great early pictures of Alice Cooper and Blue Oyster Cult and Van Halen and Black Sabbath and Rush and, Zeppelin, and even some of these photographs, and Kiss for sure, and even some of these Twisted Sister. A lot of these photographs you may have seen elsewhere. Yeah, that's Frank White who took them. There they are right there. And then seen all these great early, because I didn't know Frank back in the 80s. I've only known Frank probably since the early 2000s. But to see all these great shots of Frank as a teenager. They was taking pictures at the US Festival, right? How cool is that? Sitting there in the crowd, getting himself a spot, standing there all day and just taking photographs. A lot of cool stories about him hanging out with Dio and a lot of these bands. So, the behind-the-scenes stuff is really cool. Interesting stuff about the Black Sabbath Born Again show with Quiet Riot at the Meadowlands. I was at that one too, talking about hanging out with the Quiet Riot guys after the band and the cocaine stories. And, yeah, there's, being in the kind of like in the Metallica circle back when Metallica first came up. There's a lot of discussion here about the early Megaforce years. Hanging out with AC/DC, right? Getting to know Joe Lynn Turner, because of course Joe was a New Jersey guy. Alan talking about all these early bands that he was in when he first got his start as a vocalist, kind of moving up the chain, right? And it's just kind of cool to hear about a lot of these bands that I'm from New York, right? So I remember hearing about some of these bands, but not all of them, because each area has its own scene. So the Jersey scene, a little bit different than the New York scene, and certainly the Hudson Valley scene. So, not always did these bands go venture into other places. I'm sure many of them did, but not all, and that was not always the case. So, kind of cool to hear about some of these local New Jersey bands that didn't really make the trek up here all that often back then. But yeah, just a very, very cool book. These kind of regional books are always kind of fun, and I think this is, if you are live on the East Coast and you're a metal fan, you probably will want to get a hold of this and check it out. So let me see if I can get you any information. I'll drop a link. So here's the link right here. It's www.jerseymetalbook.com, and I will get you guys a shot of that. There you have it, right there. So definitely a fun read. I would highly recommend checking it out. Like I said, they're going to have there'll be a part 2 of this, and I think they're planning at least 3 parts. So we'll see. But for now, this one is available. Jersey Metal: History of the Garden State's Heavy Metal Scene, Volume 1, 69 to 86, by Frank White and Alan Tecchio. Go check it out. Visit us on the web at www.seaoftranquility.org. We're on Facebook. We're on YouTube. All together, all the damn time. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and click on that notification bell so you get alert of all of our content as it posts. And please do hit the like button before you leave. Also, down below we got the links to our Ko-Fi page for channel donations, as well as our merch page. So thanks in advance for all your support there. And we'll see you soon here with more stuff. I am Pete Pardo. Thanks for watching, and happy reading, everybody. Take care. Bye-bye.